Thank you very much. This is the third day of our International Forum Chernobyl, which today is dedicated to science. And at this final discussion, panel, this all-female panel to discuss the scientific, the RD aspect. Thank you for this great day. Very intensive it has been. And I would like to thank you for your work in advertising science around Chernobyl, promulgating, because it's a taboo in the Ukrainian society. It is related to a big trauma. It is related to a big number of myths, which appeared because there was that a lack of information. The gap, first it was hushed, now uncovered, now we have the filter of this too busy information space. We discussed the cultural methods and information and techniques, modern technologies and the new media to cover the topic in the society. If you missed it, you can look it up. We have all the records of all those conversations. Today, let's concentrate, let's focus on the brand of science in Chernobyl. And it seems to me that because of the research in Chernobyl, or through this R&D development, we can introduce a new brand of Chernobyl. There is a great value in researchers who work with that topic, the exclusivity for all the time, well, not just the exclusion zone, and the great qualification of our cadre that is well appreciated in all the world. But what is missing, I'm asking myself and my interlocutors here, for this not to be just Chernobyl the way we know it, the disastrous place, but science in Chernobyl, R&D in Chernobyl to become a great international brand in European. Olena, let's start with you. Thank you very much. Well, I would say that we lack the optimism a little bit, because if we dive deep into the philosophy, and there's no other way, we have this generation gap and the generation trauma, and sometimes we fail and remember it for a long time, if not forever. On numerous occasions in our discussions, that was expressed by the Ukrainian researchers that we needed to plan for a long term, not a period of 2, but rather 20, 50, 100 years if we discuss the sarcophagus. And I think as Ukrainians, as people who are traumatized by the USSR, somehow have this difficulty with the trust. And of course, we talked about that with Svitlana. Researchers should be supported, not just with the money, with the funds, but morally also. And I worked in Fukushima for 2 years, and the support is great when you say that you're a researcher. They call you sensei, and I was 26, and that is incredible. And you come starting from the airport, where you have this special category of visa, the research, a special researcher's visa, and the attitude is different, even with the customs officers and the border guard service. And when you say doctor instead of Mr. Mrs. And people call you that at the airport, and people make jokes of that, that you study for 3 years just to be called a doctor. Respect is something we all need. Appreciation, maybe for researchers, for scientists, the military in the United States, somebody can come to them and thank for the service. Somebody suggested that we press the palm of our hand to the heart, but this is not widespread yet, not popular as a gesture. So thanks to the researchers who contributed and the sponsors who provided this great venue for such a wonderful discussion, which is necessary, and to representatives of the media and this government. So we can summarize saying that the brand Science of Chernobyl needs support from the brand called Science in Ukraine. And we have come back with great respect during this pandemic to medical care. We realized suddenly that we needed medical personnel. I don't think we should call for another war or another disaster to appreciate scientists, the researchers. Science is not of such a great interest for the younger generation, somebody suggests, but I would like to disagree with that. A couple of years we started that public campaign of advocating for science with public discussions. And the topics were different. The celebrities participating were of sorts, and it was interesting to hear now the opinion of scientists. And when we discuss Chernobyl and science, I think Chernobyl is a great brand in its own right. And if we discuss Chernobyl, that requires a whole torrent of repairs and attracts great attention. Like that piece of news last year, I remember we were all watching its dissemination. It was at the age of fake sense research. Bungee from Chernobyl to colonize the Mars. And I remember how they were using that space station, and together with the fact checkers, we tried to and we had
Perhaps Kateryna or Olena can tell us more about it. Right. I think that's a question to me. That wasn't a fake news, actually, because yes, indeed, in early 90s, a group of Nelia Zhdanova and Tatiana Tugay did carry out very fundamental research, and they discovered that just regular mushrooms, if put in an environment with high doses of ionizing radiation, start getting darker. So they generate melanine, and that's the ferment that makes us suntanned, actually. Right. So they also show that radiotrophism of mushrooms exists, and they said that melanism of mushrooms is a protective mechanism that these species use to get protected against ionizing radiation. However, the research carried in the International Space Station leaned on the findings of that very research group, but they actually were different people. They studied different types of mushrooms, including fungi, and they did a totally different experiment. So some time ago, they got the funding to continue this research, but it has expired already. Yeah, if I may add, since I work for the Nuclear Research Institute, I will say that such research is ongoing at our institute, and the same stains of fungi in the Petri bowls would be put into special containers where warm or even hot particles with radionuclides and while affected by radionuclides, those fungi become biologically different. So we understand that it's not only physical and chemical process, but also the process linked to the activity of biological organisms, that's fungi. So what happens to the hot particles exactly? Look, hot particles are, for example, particles of fuel which is spent, but they got into the environment after the explosion. They might be very tiny, like 1 micron or even smaller, but inside those hot particles, okay, if you look at glass, so imagine that a radionuclide will be glazed by glass. Just for you to understand what happens. If we throw glass into water, nothing will happen to it. It will be just being reshaped by the ocean water. But if this hot particle gets into the environment with fungi, then the fungi start impacting those hot particles, just eroding them of sorts. And then those radionuclides become biologically available. They are not glazed. And when the fungus dies, then the particle becomes more biologically associated or adjusted. And they can be found actually in soil, in trees, in insects and animals that feed from those trees or soil. And now they are not that close. They become available, accessible to biological organisms, and thus they become a part of the food chain. They become a part of leaves, for example. Leaves fall down and they decompose into the soil, and then insects feed on the soil, etc. Okay, if I may add to this discussion is just an indicator of what the Chernobyl science lacks, because it is difficult to speak about complex matters in plain language. And the popularization or promotion of science in plain language is very important. And once we do that, then the general public would be better prepared to perceive scientific information as well, and they will be prepared to go beyond the box or out of the box in their thinking, and they will understand vaccination better, they will understand radiation better, they won't be scared, there will be no panic associated with, say, radiation or vaccination for that matter. So we should be speaking about science at different level of complexity with different age groups. We love to work in labs or say do field work, all isolated from the outside world. But it is also our mission to go out, to communicate with people, and to deliver important scientific information to them as well. Speaking about science is difficult. Why? Because when you start speaking with a person about your scientific quote unquote matters, you first try to gauge the level of their education. In our country, even school leavers or university leavers lack knowledge in some areas at the very basic level. And you start telling people about what cell is about, what's plant, what's animal, etc. So it is very pleasing to talk to people, to the audiences who understand you, but we have to talk to different audiences. We are scared to discuss Chernobyl, but at the same time, we are not scared to go to Chernobyl zone as tourists. It's conundrum, or it's a paradox that I cannot explain. It is difficult to explain, for example, it to people why they shouldn't be eating mushrooms or berries from that zone, because they are so beautiful, they are large and appealing, but you are telling people that they cannot eat them because they are contaminated with radiation. They say, okay, I can't see it, so why I would be eating this produce? So it is important to explain it to people that you cannot see the radiation, but you can be affected by it. So you won't lose your hand or your arm within one day or 1 month even, but you can actually get sick in 10 years from now. Quite recently, I read an article of German researchers who recommend that mushrooms should not be picked even in the USA because of the impact of Chernobyl radiation, and in German Alps as well.